Hello, my friends. My name is Joe. This is the Joe Martino Show. And today we're going to talk about what we can learn about life from a Bridezilla and Groomzilla. Were they just being what we've raised them to be? Let's kick it off. This is the Joe Martino Show.
You're listening to the Joe Martino Show, a podcast dealing with all things emotional, relational, and human nature. Joe is a licensed counselor in the state of Michigan, specializing in relationship therapy. He is also the author of the book, The Emotionally Secure Couple. All advice offered in this episode is offered for entertainment and educational purposes only. Enjoy the show.
All right, let's talk about unintended consequences today. The New York Post, which, don't judge me, I like reading the New York Post. I'm an East Coast kid that has transplanted to the Midwest, and I love my life in the Midwest. Many times I consider myself a Midwesterner, a Great Lakes region person, but I do like to follow the news out on the East Coast, and I would never move. I actually never want to move back out there. I guess I can't say I wouldn't, but I don't want to. I have no desire. However, I do enjoy reading the New York Post, and here is the headline. Bride and groom blasted for 15 outrageous wedding day rules for guest. Quote, your opinion is irrelevant. And then there's an article with 76 currently wonderful comments. They're worth their own weight in entertainment gold. So partially for my entertainment and yours, I'm going to read part of the article to you, but then I want to discuss something serious. Okay, so the article starts out, guest had to say, I do to this matrimonial mandate. A bride and groom have been blasted as insert bad name for giving guests a list of 15 rules to follow on their wedding day. The couple, who have not been identified, were shamed after a disgruntled invitee leaked the list, which round up on Reddit, with the caption, Bridezilla, Groomzilla. The bluntly written list began by reminding guests that they were not to overshadow the newlyweds, with the first rule reading, this is her and his big day, not yours. Do not get in the photographer's way, the couple then implored before ordering guests to only dress in black and gold attire. And they actually very kindly provided all of the rules, right? And so there's someone's, the attire is black and gold, do not rearrange seats. We have a seating chart for a reason. If you didn't put out any money for the wedding, keep your should've, could've, would've's to yourself. Your opinion is irrelevant. Pace yourself when drinking. No big announcements or proposals. If you can't handle or dislike music being played, simply go home. This is a celebration, not a funeral. This is a taking over for the 99 2000s type of event, so there will be twerking. I don't really know what that means, but whatever. Use hashtag blank when posting pics. Do not sit down all night. No outside liquor. If caught, you will be escorted out. That's probably my favorite. Refer back to rule number 1. The bride and groom said what they said. Turn all the way up. Now, here's the thing. I don't really know these people. I don't know the story. I don't know why they posted this. I don't know why they felt the need to post this. But I am always kind of surprised when our society is shocked about people acting like they're the most important person in the universe when we have spent their entire lives educating them under the belief that they are the most important person in the universe. I do not understand why we're surprised by that. Now, most of those rules I don't really think are that big of a deal. I do think it's a little bit of a jerkish to say this is mine and my wife's big day, not yours. Like, I feel like we've gone a little crazy with events, with weddings, with proms, with all of it. You're probably like, wait a second, did he just lump weddings and proms together? I did, not because I think they're the same event, but because we have all these now, you know, they have to be bigger and better and crazier. And I don't know, I read the rules. You can look it up. It's on NewYorkPost.com. Tell me what you think, you know, but like the truth is, if you don't like the music, sure, go home. But I don't know. I've done a lot of weddings, and by done, I mean I've officiated a lot of weddings. I've talked to a lot of brides and grooms. I don't understand how, like, was somebody going to come up to them and be like, we don't like your music. We hope you have the greatest marriage ever, but your music sucks. I really doubt that, right? Like, I just don't see that happening. And the whole don't rearrange seats, we have a seating chart for a reason. Okay, but again, how often do seats get rearranged? I don't know. Maybe that's a new thing that I missed somehow. My daughter is planning her wedding or potentially planning her wedding. And as we, run through this, here's my question. Can something be all about the bride and groom and the community? Like, in other words, what's the paper here? What's the plot that we're trying to run out? What's the story that we're trying to tell? It's almost like we encourage narcissism and then we're shocked when narcissism happens. And when I say narcissism, I don't mean NPD. I think a lot of times armchair psychologists, they read about NPD and they're like, oh, well, this person is selfish and so they're NPD. We've lost the margins in society. I've talked about this before. If you're sad for 3 days, you're not depressed, you're sad, right? There's a margin there that we have to travel through of prolonged sadness for depression to be a diagnosis. At least that's the way it's supposed to be, or that's the way it was. We can do away with that, but it's going to cause troubles. And here's the thing, and I get it. The New York Post is a 24/7, essentially a rag. Like they need to come up with information and they need to get clicks. And so that's something, in their weird but true section that they can hit and people will click on it and move forward. But the comments, people are like, now there are people that defended them, but the comments are just, Zen Liberator said, if that's the way you speak to your loved ones, or is that the way they need to be told things because they lack common sense, it would be best to have a small wedding or no wedding at all and just elope. Now, here's the thing. I don't want my kids to elope. I'm cool with the small wedding. I want to go through the ceremony. I think there is historical significance to that. However, the comments are like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they did this. One guy doesn't understand the father and daughter dance twerking. I guess that's how he interpreted the rule, that there will be. I don't really understand that. And part of that is because some of it's blacked out, so maybe, or redacted. So I don't understand it. But somehow he feels that the father and daughter are going to twerk. Here's the thing. There's some that are like, oh, no, the rules aren't that bad, but their tone. But we've literally told our kids that they're the most important person in the room. We have told them, don't ever don't ever go against your instincts. Trust your gut. Whatever you feel is supreme. That's crazy talk. And this is what happens when we do that. We create people who think it's totally okay to tell other people everything because, well, it's my day. It's my day. Okay, it is your day. But can it be your day and can you still be polite? Prom. I had a client who told me, yeah, so-and-so asked me and I actually kind of liked him, but his prom proposal was stupid. So I told him no, he needed to up that. So we're really now deciding, and this is encouraged. I hate prom proposals. I've gone off about these before. This episode's a little bit of a rant. I get that. And so what happens is, the kids need to come up with these crazy ways to ask. You can't just say like, hey, do you want to go to prom with me? Which is the way it was when I was in school. And maybe that makes me, boomer alert. But this is the problem. What we've done is we've said, how I feel is supreme and manners don't matter. And I really do. I think this is evidence of that. Because here's the thing. This is to me, these rules are relatively mild. The fact that they went on to say you can wear black or gold, not red, blue, or green. So I'm guessing there was some colors. Those were some of the colors for the wedding. And definitely no white, which I get. I've always thought it was kind of weird when people wear white to a wedding that isn't theirs. But why would you talk to someone like this unless you just think you're the most important person in the room? And that's what we're running into time and time again is what are the results of what we do? This is really what I want to talk about today. What are the results of how we parent? What are the results of telling people Anytime you feel nervous or sad or insecure, that's bad. That's not scientifically true. Anxiety is actually a good emotion in the right doses. It helps us to grow. And if you don't believe me, right, you think I'm doing misinformation, which, by the way, I have an episode coming up about that. Who gets to decide what is misinformation? Had a fascinating conversation with a guy who thinks we should have to pass a test in order to vote because, people uninformed voting, and you should have to pass a test. Like, misinformation laws are good if you post something we disagree with. And so I asked him, well, who gets to decide what misinformation is? And essentially he said, well, I that's a nuanced answer. Okay, well, give me the broad strokes. Couldn't do it, right? So be sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already, and that'll be coming up soon. But here's the question. If you think that I'm giving you misinformation when I say anxiety is good for you, look up Kelly McConical, PhD, world-known professor, and she will actually tell you that stress is good for you. Anxiety is your body's reaction and preparation to stress to get something done, to navigate something. But what we tell kids is, hey, if you feel any anxiety, just don't do it, honey. You don't have to do anything that makes you uncomfortable. And then we sit back and we're shocked when kids don't leave the house ever, when they don't go engage in learning to take their driver's test, when they don't do things that they find create anxiety in them and they disengage. We're shocked. Oh my God, what's going on with the kids? Well, nothing. They're just doing what we trained them to do. They're literally just doing what we conditioned them to do. The human body is, especially at a younger age, is a relatively simple mechanism. You condition it, and it will do something. You know what, honey? If you feel uncomfortable, you don't have to do it. You don't have to go to school today. Joe, that's a minority. No, actually it isn't. You don't have to do anything you feel uncomfortable with. Now, there is balance here. And this is something I try to hammer all the time. We have to find balance. And I want to give you a perfect example. Yesterday, my son was mad at my wife because she posted a picture. Actually, she didn't post it. She snapped it to me and my children. And my oldest daughters, or at least one of them, I believe, incited some angst into him. And he's going on and on and on and on and on about how he's frustrated that my wife sent that picture. She explained to him, hey, look, I told you I was going to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We get a first-year picture. And, there's this whole thing. And part of me, I told my wife, I said, part of me wanted to look at him and just say, I just don't care. Just stop talking. Now, here's the thing. This is where we go too far one way or the other, right? I'm the parent, and I get to tell you what I'm going to do. That's too far one way. But because you feel that way, I'm going to alter all of my behavior is another. Well, his no should have power, Joe. Of course it should. Consent is a thing. Yes, it is. And maybe, just maybe, he's overly tired because he stayed up late and he had an overwhelming day with a lot of schoolwork. Maybe that's a possibility too. And there is some all or nothing thinking going on, right? We have to live in that balance. Just because he has emotions, having the emotions can be valid. It doesn't mean I have to alter my behavior, or in this case, my wife has to alter her behavior. And it doesn't mean that I somehow need to convey to him that his opinion is the only one that matters in the universe. There has to be balance there. I was talking to a parent one time who was talking to me about their child and a conflict they had with their sister about their children. Both of them, their oldest children, are the same age. And the woman who was talking to me cornered me in public, which, look, don't do that, but that's another day. Wanted to talk to me about her sister. And I was like, okay, what's going on? Well, my sister is mad at me because when we were over at their house, the two boys were, I'm guessing 5 or 6, were playing with race cars, and my son didn't want to play with the one car because it was the car that always lost. And so I told her that she needed to make our boys switch. And now you would think the plot of the story would be, and she didn't. But no. She did make them switch. And the woman talked to me, her son still lost. And so then he didn't want to play anymore. And her son, the other son, still did, her nephew. And the nephew was like, well, then you don't play, but I'm going to play with my brother. And her and her sister got in an argument because She believed her sister should have made the nephew stop so that her son didn't feel bad about himself having to play by himself. Run that movie all the way out. If you've been listening for any length of time, you know that's one of my favorite things to do. Whatever we're pondering, whatever we want to do, whatever we're thinking about not doing, we run the movie out. How does it end? What does that lead to? What does my actions in this scene lead to in the next scene? And we're going to talk about this, I think, in 2 or 3 weeks here. What is going on with parenting? I just had a fascinating conversation with someone. They wrote in and they were like, hey, I don't really like the way you parent. And as I talked to them, I realized they have confused permissive parenting, which we don't want to do, with what I'm talking about. And they were a little upset when I pointed that out. I was like, yeah, actually what you're doing is permissive parenting. It's not the parenting that I'm talking about. We're going to talk about that difference. But you have to run out the movie all the time. What does it lead? So if her son never feels bad about himself, how does he become an adult who can handle losing, who can handle feeling bad for himself, who can handle trying? You know what happens? He typically becomes an adult who doesn't try anything, who disengages his wife when she's upset with him, who stays away from his children when they're upset with him, who doesn't build relationships, and at the same time laments that he doesn't have the life he wants because he was never forced to engage risk. And so okay, this is a bit of a rant, but here's the thing I don't understand. All of these people, and I'm talking to people my age here, they're so upset about today's youth and generations, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so you know what? I actually agree with it. It's strange. I hear people talking to me, especially 20-somethings, early 30s. They talk to me about how hard their life is because they had to work 10 hours in one day. I've had people, I just can't work till 7 at night. It's just so sad. And I hear people say, well, I don't have the money I want. But then their Facebook, their social media, well, not their Facebook, a lot of them more Instagram, is full of going out and drinking out. And look, here's the thing. I'm not a teetotaler. But I always tell people I don't like to drink out because it's hard for me to pay $8 for a drink that I could make at home for $1.50. And so there are certainly things that generation needs to answer for. But here's my question. Who raised these kids? When I was doing a rough draft of this, my son heard me practicing. And when I said, who raised them? He looks at me and goes, their parents. I'm like, yeah. And who are their parents? Their parents are the very people that are complaining about the behaviors they're taking. Now, some of them, it's because they're not living the behaviors that you wanted them to. And we'd have to ask questions about that. Had a fun conversation with a guy this week. And he said, yeah, I've just had friends warn me that once their kids got phones, everything was downhill. And I was like, well, I don't know your friends and I don't want to know them because I don't want to insult them. Or I don't want them to feel insulted and get mad at me, to be honest. But then they didn't build a relationship. That's just real life. And it's okay, like they can be, because here's the thing. I ran into somebody heard the conversation, they were talking to me about it, and they were like, well, we didn't give our kids their phones till they were 16, and we've never regretted it. Well, how old are your kids? They're 16 and some odd months. Ran into somebody else who had heard something I was talking about on devices, and said, yeah, actually, we didn't give our kids their phones till they were 16, and we regret it tremendously because they never learned to manage them while they were under our care. We feel that the battle is far more uphill now. And here's the thing. We can complain about the younger generation if we want. But my question is, what are we doing about it? What are we looking at? And that's kind of this whole thing. People complaining about those brides or that bride and that groom. That's fine. But then here's my question. Are you raising your kids to be selfish? Are you living your life as though you just need to be more selfish? Because if you are, then this is the natural consequence of that. And that's something we need to run out and make appropriate adjustments. What are the natural consequences of the behaviors that we take? That's the whole point of this podcast today. What are the natural consequences of the behaviors that you're doing? And do you want those consequences? And if not, what are you doing to change them? Really simple. That's it. A little bit of a rant, a little bit of fun. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please feel free to share it with your friends. Thanks so much for listening. We'll catch you next week.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed today's show, please share with a friend. And hey, give us that rating in your podcast store. Until next time, change possible.